Hi, y'all.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, we're ready to do our case study number 2 for the AAPTEL task 2. And we had to read our little case study and then answer 3 questions at the end. So I know we've all done that on our own. And then we're just to scholarly discuss our questions and have a reflective conversation about this case study and what the principal of Farmview School, Miss Harrington, could have done better or did perfectly. So, question 1 was talking about what guidelines could Donna have used or have provided for the teachers prior to their grade level meeting. So,
Are you there?
Huh?
Is Maya there? Did we lose her?
No, can you hear me?
There
I
you
see
go.
you and hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I said that one of the first things that she could have provided for the teachers at the grade level meeting were a specific focus for their observations that these teachers are going to go in and do. Like, were they looking at student engagement specifically? Were they looking at how the teachers gave student feedback or the learning goals? And then I also said that she should have provided maybe some reflective questions that they can think about when they're doing those observations. And she probably should have told them more guidelines on if she wanted them to give constructive feedback or just point out the positivity in their lessons versus just sending them in there to do observations and not really giving them an ideal of what they're looking for.
I totally agree with you, Crystal. I was saying that I also said that teachers could have been provided training as well in order to understand how effectively to evaluate each other. And just like you said, what specifically to look for. And then also kind of piggyback on other schools too. And, you know, if they're using this model and get support from them and what their models look like and how it's being effective in their schools.
It didn't indicate at all whether any other school was doing it. It did say that what she got approval from the superintendent or whatever to be able to kind of change the way she was going to look at teacher observations, but didn't say that other schools were doing it.
No, she I didn't think she gave them any guidance. She just said that she wanted to change teacher observations so that teachers would have input, and that was it. She didn't really give any guidance. And then the guy, the teacher leader, his name,
Harold Robinson.
Yeah, Harold Robinson said that he would be willing to work out the specifics with the staff, but I felt like he didn't do any of that, and that just opened the door for that third grade.
Yeah, I did.
Grade level to say, no, we don't want to do that. We just want to keep it like it is.
They had some pushback.
Yeah, and so I thought that she could have told them, I want you to come up with some options. For you to come to the meeting with 2 or 3 options for how we can change teacher observations. And then they would have had to have come up with some kind of ideas.
Well,
Right.
I feel like she tried to start with the PLC, or at least maybe put one together by getting those 5 teachers in the school that were respected. But then I don't feel like she gave that PLC any type of leadership or responsibility with coming up, like you said, here are the
That's right.
5 ways that we're going to talk about redoing teacher observations. Which one does this grade level want to pick, or which one do they want to do? You bring up a good point there. They should have had ideals and presented them to those grade levels, and then let them choose from a select list instead of leaving 5 or 6 teachers just to brainstorm on the spot how we're going to do this.
Yeah, or they could have asked the teachers to come up with options. The teachers were having meetings before they had a meeting with her. And so they should have come to the meeting with some options. And, you know, two groups did and one didn't. They came with nothing. And then they had to go back to the table and come up with an idea.
Yeah, I agree. Because some teachers may be good at their craft and at teaching, but may not necessarily know how to be a good evaluator for other teachers. So just giving them those guidelines as far as what to look for, even across the board, like the PLC team could have come together and, you know, gotten guidelines for it so everybody knows, you know, what to, I think that would have been more effective.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that leads us right into that second question of how could the teacher's final plans be effective for the instructional process? And, you know, I feel like whenever, as an observer, if you're going in to do the observations, when you get in there, teachers always need that feedback, whether it's positive or constructive feedback. They still need that feedback, and you could utilize some of your mentor teachers, your veteran teachers, to be the leaders, maybe the first ones going in to do the observations of those teachers. And then from that, I think that it should help the school be able to design what kind of professional development needs to be implemented for the teachers. Like after the observations, you know, I noticed you did this well. However, this book might have some suggestions for that activity or whatnot. The professional development that the school would follow, because they said they're going to do this the next year, could have been part of the outcome from those observations.
Yeah,
I agree. I think teachers can be more reflective when, you know, and be able to look at yourself and evaluate yourself better. When you kind of look at others, you can kind of look at yourself in the mirror as well and say, well, how can I improve? How can I be a better teacher? What can I do differently? When you can evaluate yourself. And I know through this process, it's helped me just individually as a teacher. I'm constantly evaluating and looking at myself in the mirror when I'm able to evaluate others.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I really thought it was pretty interesting the way the third grade, the grade level teachers decided they just wanted to video their class and they just wanted to watch it themselves. They didn't want anybody else watching it. Well, what's the criteria? What are you looking for?
Right.
But the principal was very flexible. So maybe that was a start for giving the teacher some autonomy.
Yeah, and keep in mind that was the grade level with the veteran teachers. So that was interesting. I thought that was very interesting that those teachers were kind of resistant to any kind of changes.
Listen, I discovered this week that I am the oldest teacher on my hall, and I really had no idea. Nobody had an idea. You know, because I don't tell people how old I am. So I'm one of those veteran teachers, and I love change.
Yeah.
Always looking for things that are new. I have to keep myself entertained. If I'm entertained, I certainly can't entertain the students.
That's great.
Somewhere in here,
it was odd.
Somewhere in here, one of the PLC members pointed out that there were some teachers that won't change, but then there were other veteran teachers that had been, here it is, that Mr. Robertson said, had been teaching a long time, and they did not believe they needed any changes to improve. So that must be those third grade teachers. And I don't know, videotaping myself and watching myself teach.
I wouldn't like that.
I've done that once, and
No.
I was very hard on myself. And I don't know that that would be the best way for me to reflect on my teaching, because sometimes you're so hard on yourself, you need an outside observer who can say, no, you did that very well, where it didn't go the way my head planned it, therefore it's bad in my eyes. But if you just saw it taking place, you might see that bigger picture that I was shooting for. So I wonder if that is actually the best method for those veteran teachers, or if that's going to come up to be a hindrance in the long run. But it didn't go that far in detail in the case study. So the third question talks about how could the principal be able to evaluate whether the new observation format was working successfully for the students. And I didn't jump straight to data here, because sometimes I think when you're just talking about teacher observations, I don't know that you can link a test score to it immediately. But again, I think that the suggestions for the professional development would be obvious through those observations, whether you had teachers that struggled with technology, struggled with classroom management, struggled with student feedback, because then you can organize your school for the next year with the PDs to hit some of those areas that a grade level felt they were weakest on when overall. And I also think that one of the ways you can tell if the students are going to be successful is just by student engagement. So in a follow-up observation, did you notice a big change in that student engagement piece? And then it's hard to judge, and it's hard to judge in an observation, but I think you could possibly do some reflective thinking about the relationships that the teachers have with those students. You know, if the relationships are improving, then of course you'll see some improvements in student achievement.
I agree, absolutely. And I think the principal could also do more walkthroughs, since they're so quick. Just do more walkthroughs. And I think that would be an effective way to evaluate whether the plan is actually working. And just have specific guidelines in those walkthroughs, just like what we're doing with the AAPTEL, to see if the necessary changes are being put in place. And not only that, but the surveys that we did, I think that would be an effective way to tell whether that's working for the teachers. Take teacher surveys, student surveys, parent surveys. I think that would be another tool to help to see whether it's being successful as well. Just getting that feedback.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think that we depend so much on those test scores. And I don't think that data I don't think it's reliable the majority of the time. I've watched too many students who just go through and click answers, put their head on the desk and go to sleep. And so I know that data is not always reliable. So I do like using other ways. And I think that, you know, just informal assessments, just, you know, take it out of class. Did the kids learn what they needed to learn that day? I think that that's a good way to measure. But unfortunately, everybody's going to say, well, how are your kids tested?
Of course, that's the ultimate way of, you know, seeing whether the students are being successful, the test scores. But you would be surprised how effective it is to just hear the students' voices and talk to them and find out what's working. Just the informal, like you said, informal assessments give you a lot of information.
Yes, they do.
Because waiting on that big data, those state test scores, and it's just so far away that I don't want to keep doing something if I'm not sure it's working immediately. So they would have to, she would have to put something in place quicker that gets a better ideal or a big picture of if those new observations are helping the teachers to change the way they're teaching, that's going to have a direct impact on the student's success in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, with one of those articles we were reading, or I was reading, it says it's from Donaldson, and I'm going to mess up the other guy's name, Marvagato. It says there that schools that enlist teacher leaders and administrators beyond the principal to conduct observations facilitated instructional improvement. So that right there says that what Miss Donna, the principal in the case study, was doing is on the right path, and is one of the best practices for doing observations, because when it's just the principal, even though you work with them every day, you're not next to them every day. But my other math teacher, my 6th grade math teacher, if they're coming to me and saying, hey, did you think about trying this in your classroom? When I was in there the other day, I saw this going on. It might make me make the change a little faster because I feel like they're in the trenches with me. They might know better what's going to affect my kids in my classes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the I guess, authors that kind of supported what the principal was doing. And it just says that, I was saying in the beginning that teachers need feedback, that's why it's so important for teacher evaluations, because it says teacher evaluations could improve a teacher's practice. And that's from Firestone and Donaldson in one of their articles about teacher evaluations as data use, what recent research suggests. So it does say that when you evaluate a teacher, it's going to improve their instructional practice, but it has to only occur through them getting feedback. So they have to know, hey, you did this good, or hey, this part could be tweaked a little more. So I think when she talked about, or when we answered those questions about what the final plans could be, the principal would have to kind of set up the guidelines we were talking about as to what you're looking for, what the purpose of that observation is, so that you can give that feedback so that I can improve my instruction.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Not only that, in the article, in the case study, it stated principals can effectively plan and implement needed changes when they involve staff fully from the beginning through the evaluation process. And just tying in the research with that under teacher leadership and decision making, I researched Darling Hammond, and the research suggested that the quality of a teacher is the most important predictor of the student's success. And just by consistently supporting teachers, they are given more powerful opportunities to reach their full potential in the classroom, which puts students on a path to success. Just that teacher empowerment is just so important in order for them to take ownership. And like I said earlier, just being able to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what are some things you can do to improve your craft? How can you reach your students differently or more effectively? Just constantly asking yourself that question. And I think that's important. And that was a good point where I found that research that tied into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Marzano, he talks about how student success depends on all of the stakeholders. It goes back to the district leaders as well as school leaders, the teachers. So everybody needs to take ownership. And, I don't know that always happens, but it appeared in the article, the principal was taking ownership in a way that she was giving the teachers autonomy. And, sometimes just giving that, letting teachers know that you value them as professionals and treating them like they're professionals. We
Mhm.
pull out professional behavior.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
And one of the articles actually said, it was one with Whitaker, was saying that it's important to provide a high quality and nurturing environment for the staff. And, you know, in this time of stress, high stress, and trying to get student scores up, I don't know that we always provide a nurturing environment. And I thought that this principal was definitely trying to do that, because she ended up being agreeable with plans, even though they were all different.
Could you imagine being that principal and having so many different types of observations and how you would compile all that data?
I know.
Yeah,
that would be tough.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get a big full picture of how your school's doing, I do agree that having each one do something different with their observations. One's just given one statement that's helpful, one statement that was noting their best part of their lesson. One's videotaping themselves, and she added those 2 reflective questions for them. What do they think was positive? What do they think they could do to improve? Then she's got another one where it just says they set up a satisfactory plan, but it didn't really say what the plan was. So I couldn't imagine. She's got little snapshots of each grade level, how much time it would take for her to actually sit down and pull all that together to say, my teachers are being effective educators. They're reflecting on their craft. They're ready to go learn new things and try new things, implement the latest best practices. So I don't know. That seems a little hard, but I'm sure that administrator role in general is very hard.
Well, all of the grade levels said that they wanted to observe each other. But that the 2nd and 4th and 5th grade said,
is that just one
that
positive?
they were going to provide 1 constructive comment and 1 positive comment from the observation, which is, you know, that's a good thing, because teachers really, you know, criticizing one thing at a time is probably better than sitting down and just, you know, ripping them apart.
That's true. Sometimes you need to bring out the positive and then let them improve on, you know, something, you know, that they can improve on, but bring out more of the positive as much as you can, because
As you were just saying that, I just thought, I wonder if any of the teachers got to sit down with who was going to observe them and say, hey, I want you to look at this part of my teaching. For instance, look at my technology usage, or look at how I provide student feedback, so that when I would go in and observe, I would know what that teacher wanted to focus on. Like if one of the teachers had already been reflective and said, I think I'm weak in this area, can you watch how I'm doing this? Maybe it's transition times in between activities. And then they could, you know, give feedback on, hey, this is what I use, this is how I do it, or, you know, you did it, worked through it, but it was crazy. That's my transition time.
Yeah.
How do they do that in North Carolina? How do they observe? Is it, does it vary from district to district?
I think it varies from district to district. Well, I think the instrument that they use, the tools they use varies, but I think overall it may be the same in general. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. Because we have the North Carolina standards you look for, and they may be very similar to South Carolina. I think they are.
They're close. And one
the
of the
standards are.
They showed the other
we
night.
We use college and career readiness standards in South Carolina.
Okay.
But our evaluation tool has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Every year.
it's a state tool, and it is a bear.
Mm-hmm.
Already said it's called the 4.0 rubric, and they've
Uh-huh.
said that it's just about impossible to get a 4.0. And here's what I want to know. Why would you
What?
evaluation tool that is impossible to achieve? It's very long and extremely detailed. And I fear that it's setting teachers up for failure.
It's setting us up so that we'll leave the profession's what it's doing. How are you going to tell me I can't be the best at some part of my job? That'd be like
That's
telling
true.
Tom Brady, you know, you're the best quarterback there is, but somebody's probably better, so we're not going to pay you the top salary. They don't do that for professional athletes. If they're the
Yeah.
best they are at that time, they pay them and give them, in our instance, a 4 on that part of the rubric. But they flat out told us in more than one meeting, don't expect to
Yes.
get any 4s. You'll be lucky if you get
Yes.
1, and you'll have to be a really jam up teacher to get 1 4. So you're telling me already that I'm not going to be good. It's like telling a kid that they can't learn their multiplication tables.
That's right.
You know, I don't
Tell us
like,
you can't, we can't, and then we can't.
I don't like that part of it. I mean, I understand that they don't want to give me a 4 and then me sit back on my laurels and think that I was a 4 once. I'm always going to be a 4. You know, education, times change, kids change, the environment changes. So you could be a 4 one year and a 3 the next. But I think to send teachers in knowing we're getting observed and knowing we're not going to be good at any one part of that observation, that's just disheartening. That's really disheartening. And it's going to make a lot of teachers leave. That's like telling a surgeon, you know, you're the best surgeon there is right now to do my heart transplant, but I don't know if I want you doing it. Somebody might come along better tomorrow. What?
Mm-hmm.
But he's got to be the best at this time. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we're about to run out of time. So I guess we'll take some final thoughts.
Yeah. And that is a challenge. And I think we have to be reflective, because if we're an administrator, we're going to be looking at it from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right.
you know, if your students in your school are not being successful, then you have to turn to your teachers and say, you know, what can we do differently? How can we be more effective? And if majority of the teachers in your school are showing as proficient, but your students are not growing, then it doesn't match. So
yeah, I totally get that part of it. And
Yeah.
you can't have all your teachers rating as proficient when your kids are scoring not met. But I just don't feel like that you couldn't find one little thing that everybody does good. Everybody does something good.
And if you rate your teachers at a 1,
You got to go do an improvement plan.
you know, giving them 2s,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can't do that.
Yeah.
Can understand giving a couple of 2s, but you can't give teachers who really are good teachers 1s, because
Right.
they didn't show you what was on that paper during that particular lesson.
However, Maya, you do bring out that great point that looking through the eyes of that administrator, how do I justify my teachers being exemplary when my students are not? So that is a great point to keep in mind and think about as we go through this add-on
But in
license.
low performing schools, you know, sometimes it's really not the teachers.
And sometimes those are the best teachers in those schools.
Yes, they are. I'm in that position right now, and you know, I've taught in the best school in the state.
Mm-hmm.
My test scores were always very high, but I have no idea what they're going to be this year, because my students are not of the same caliber, and there's not an awful lot that I can do about that.
You got to keep advocating.
I can't go back and teach them everything that they should know when they are already taking 10th grade English.
Exactly.
And students come to school with so much more emotional baggage than they did years ago. And you can tell a difference in the different communities. the struggles that students go through just to get to school versus being in a affluent community where they know they're going to school, they got good clothes on, they had breakfast, and some of our kids come and they're starving. It makes a difference on their overall test scores. It makes a difference on how they feel as a student.
Yeah. It's so much bigger than what walkthrough can measure. It's so much bigger than that.
Yes, it is.
All right, girls.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm sad this is our last time we get to Zoom, so maybe we'll just plan another one later on.
I know, we need to do that.
Well, you know what? We really could do that and help each other on these classes when we're struggling. We could meet and talk it through.
Yes, we may need to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get it recorded on my computer and email it over to you guys. Don't forget to upload it in that little spot that we do and include that link to the YouTube page. And I think it's the one-page paper or one-page reflective.
Write a reflection.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, y'all have a great night and a good day a good week this week.
You too.
Same.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.